It is now public knowledge that Russia's President Vladimir Putin will not be traveling to South Africa for the BRICS summit. This was supposed to be the inaugural summit being held in Africa and particularly South Africa. And all eyes were on the world on whether Putin was going to travel to the country and whether South Africans were going to receive him with open arms. Now, the visit of Putin to South Africa would have been instrumental in very many forms, shapes, and sizes. First of all, because BRICS is this new economic bloc that is shaking the ground. It would be immature to say that it's going to give all the others a run for their money. But if you look at the foundation and the bones that they're building up for themselves, they're touting themselves to be an economic bloc to watch. You look at these countries, they're rich in mineral resources, and they're gaining traction from African countries because they are positioning themselves as the alternative trading bloc, the alternative alliance that you can join, come as you are. You know, when you're working with Western powers, there are always too many conditionalities, yet this is the first time that here's a group of people that are interested in Africans, who Africans are, what they have, and what the Africans can actually gain and get from their resources. We also know that Africa has been going through a really tough time, particularly with the United States raising its federal bank rates, and interest rates have been going higher and higher, which means that access to dollars is becoming harder and harder. And so there's a cash crunch in the African market because most of the inflation is imported inflation. If we cannot be able to import goods, if we cannot be able to have access to the dollar, if the cost of doing business is going up every single day, then Africans are suffering. When borrowing is expensive and we're borrowing on dollar denomination, yet the dollar is not even accessible in the market, it makes it really hard. And so BRICS was coming forth with very radical and revolutionary ideas of how to do business, how to lend to these people, you know, earmark the money we give you vis-a-vis your natural resources. Now, the people who will say these are controversial loans because it leaves African countries at a very vulnerable position, but it almost looks like another viable option. So that's on one thing, how instrumental BRICS could be in the continent. And second, the relationship between South Africa and Russia has been ongoing for a really long time, but because of Russian invasion to Ukraine, the relationship has been strained because Western alliances now have vested interest in Russia, and anybody that chooses to support, breathe, and stand by Russia. And unfortunately, South Africa is catching stray bullets because South Africa has had a long-standing relationship with Russia, and there were even allegations that South Africa is sending weapons to Russia, which the Foreign Affairs Minister came out and denounced. However, the pressure has not ceased. Questions that have been asked to South Africans, leaders, and even business people is, will Putin be arrested should he choose to come to South Africa? And you know, the government was almost lukewarm, did not categorically say yes, but did not categorically say no. And so nobody knew where the South African government stood. But also the South African government had to play their cards really safe, because if you outrightly choose to stand by Russia, then you've made an enemy of the West. If you say you'll arrest Putin, then you've lost a key ally in BRICS, and then the whole thing could fall apart, and you have long-standing relations with these people. So it was almost like South Africa was between a rock and a hard place. And when the brouhaha continued, President Putin just made a conscious decision not to attend and said he will send dignitaries. Now, this did not sit well with South Africans, particularly Julius Malema, who's the leader of EFF. This is what he had to say.
What is your view in relation to the latest developments, Putin not coming to South Africa?
That was because of the cowardice of the South African government, which did not guarantee his security, which did not guarantee that it will not arrest him. And we called for BRICS heads of states to stay away in solidarity with President Putin. Because today is President Putin, tomorrow it will be the Chinese president, the Indian president, or even the president of Brazil. So in solidarity with President Putin, they must send their ministers and say, we're not coming, because the establishment of BRICS was to create an alternative platform to avoid this type of nonsensical arrangement. Russia is not a signatory to ICC. And why would South Africa want to arrest people who are not a signatory to ICC? This warrant of arrest is not sanctioned by the Security Council. Why do you even want to consider such a warrant of arrest, which is far-fetched? So South Africa should have stood firmly with President Putin and even said the BRICS area are declared the BRICS areas, and we have got no control over them as South Africa, like we do with embassies and other multinational organizations. So it is actually unfair what South Africa did to President Putin. It was a serious humiliation.
Listening to Julius, you can say that he has thought through what he's saying, and he's trying to press a point and prove a message that if you come for one of us, you're coming for all of us. And so in him asking that all the other heads of states should not attend and instead send ministers, is sending two messages. It's sending a message to the South African government that you have to make a stand. You can't be lukewarm through and through. You have to make a stand. You have to decide who is your friend and stand by them and hope that they'll replicate the same loyalty when you're in the same situation. The other message is being sent to the West by saying, listen and listen very clearly. If you touch one of us, you've touched all of us. If you come for one of us, you've come for all of us. And also the call to sort of strengthen BRICS and strengthen African countries and their resolve in standing their ground. You know, when he says that there's no way that South Africa could have arrested Putin, yet Russia doesn't have any standing treaty with the ICC. Like, it's so important for African countries to make a stand, make a decision, and stand by that decision. And also, I think he makes a very valid point in saying that BRICS must stand and must stand firm, and it must come to pass and gain some power, because then that will sort of neutralize some of the powers of the global West, because this situation just shows us that the global West still hold the keys to the world, and they can do whatever it is that they want. Nobody is safe from these powers, you know. Be that as it may, all factors constant. Russia and Ukraine have their own war going, and they have their own reasons why they're invading each other. And nobody benefits from war, particularly the people in the warring countries. Obviously, war is big business. NATO have their own vested interest in Ukraine, and Russia has its own personal reasons why it's protecting itself and its territory. But at the end of the day, if BRICS does not become successful, if people do not grow a pair and stand up against the West, then this is perpetually going to happen, where if they don't like something or they want to find ways of paralyzing some of these blocks coming up, then they'll use avenues like this. So it's when I listen to Malema, it's almost like he feels like it's a shame that Putin will not be able to make it, but he is not disappointed, because I think he truly believes in the cause of BRICS, and he knows that BRICS is going to be successful whether the West wants it or they don't want it. And I think he knows that maybe under the table, South Africa has reassured President Putin of their commitment to ensuring that BRICS becomes a success. And so all the other global headlines and whatever pushback the West might be trying to, you know, spill on South Africa is just temporary, but in the long run, they're in it to make sure that this thing succeeds. Let me know what you think about Julius Malema's sentiments. I'll see you again next time.